You are tuned into the Power Chord Hour right here on 107.9 WRFA, as well as the Power Chord Hour podcast. Maybe you're watching us on YouTube. However you're checking this one out, thank you for checking it out. I'm your host, Anthony Merchant, here with you. We got another one today. I'm very excited for this one. If you listen to the radio show, I've been playing Her Head's on Fire here since the debut album came out, I don't know, a year or so ago. I think maybe 2 at this point. But I have Joseph Grillo, a.k.a. Sid Jagger, here with me of Her Head's on Fire. Many other bands, a big one, Garrison, another one that I definitely play on Power Chord Hour, and I feel like listeners probably well aware of and fans of. So we got a lot to talk about. We have the sophomore record here, Her Head's on Fire, Strange Desires. That's out now everywhere on Iodine Records. And yeah, we'll talk about that. We'll talk some Garrison, everything else in between with, Joseph. How are you doing, Joseph?
I'm doing great, man. I'm having a really, just like a very productive day. I get up at like 5:30 most mornings, and I just sort of go and go and go until I collapse. And so it's been one of those days where rather than feeling like I'm overcoming the same obstacle every moment, I feel like I'm onto new obstacles. So it's like my Super Mario screen keeps moving in the correct direction, I guess. Would be a good way to put it.
Now, does that mean we're kind of, I'm talking to you here at 9 p.m. at night. You said you wake up around like 5:30. Am I talking at like the end of your night? Is this kind of like...
No. I'll be up until usually around 11:30.
Oh, gee. Okay. Hey, so yeah. This is not the end of your night. Wow.
No.
Thank you for carving some time out.
My pleasure, man. I like I said, I really enjoy this. I find it fun.
Well, let's get into, again, we'll talk like, a bunch of music, but we'll start off with Her Head's on Fire. How long, you guys have been around forever, but I don't know if new band, I guess, I don't know if you still want to call it a new band, but how long have you guys been together now?
I guess the idea came around in 2018, but we didn't get around to doing it until maybe 2021. So I guess we've been around for 3 years. It had been sort of tossed around as like a conversation, like, wouldn't that be fun if, but we didn't actually all get into a room until, right before we recorded a record, and then right before our first show.
That's quite now knowing that part that you had, it sounds like some time to play with this all before that debut came out. And, a couple of years before you kind of started getting things going, was it kind of with something like that? Did you kind of already know what the band was going to sound like and what you wanted it to sound like, or did that kind of morph more with all of you playing? Because you had a little time in between there in the debut. Was that time to play with, I have this thought in my head or this vision, or did that all kind of just flesh out by all of you kind of playing together?
I generally don't think that bands are good as democracies. I tend to think that they usually need like a dictator, or not or a director, right? You know what I mean? Like somebody that has a vision and wants to see it through completion. But strangely enough, this project actually is a complete democracy, and it will, it changes based on the people that are in it. So we have, a rough sketch or an idea of where we're going, but everybody, nobody questions anybody's real input. So it's like, whatever the comment to the drummer might be, oh, this should be a little halftime-ish, or maybe go for a Soundgarden vibe. But that's it. Once they write what they write, we're like, yep, that's the correct drum beat. And same with the bass and same with the vocals. So it just sort of, there's just a lot of, I've said this in so many interviews, but there's just so much trust involved with the members that I know that, Jeff Dean plays guitar better than I do. So he can play the guitar. I'm not going to tell him what to do, and so, yeah, that's how it goes.
Now, with kind of with that, is that kind of, you're talking about there a second ago, like, kind of having someone kind of, at the front of things, kind of pushing things in a band, and this one kind of being more of a democracy. And I'm only going off this by what you're saying, but is this kind of new? Like normally in bands, are you the one kind of at the forefront of like writing and kind of the vision of things? And I have this idea. Maybe you're not the bass player, but you have this idea for the bass line in your head and stuff. Are you normally like that in the bands where you're like the primary songwriter, the kind of main guy doing that?
It depends on the project, so with Garrison, for example, it was a lot of the genesis was from Ed McNamara, the other guitar player, and we would kind of write the songs and then bring them to the rhythm section. And then, they would be free to play what they want to play, but there was a little bit more guidance as far as like what we're going for. And then then I joined my friend's band Instruction, Artie Shepherd from Aerotype 11. That was his band with Adam from Seisha and Tom from Quicksands. Really fun radio rock, like awesome band. But I joined them, and at that point I was like, okay, well, I'm not leading this vision at all. So I was just a supporting cast member. I kind of feel that I always liken it to theater, because it's like, imagine this play you're going to direct, this play you're going to star in, this play you're going to do lights, this play you're going to do costumes, this play you're going to do sound. And I like all of those aspects. So I'm happy to take the reins if need be. And I'm happy to sit back and play a supporting role if need be. And so every project I've done is kind of a different setup, if that answers your question.
Oh, no, it totally does. And kind of to go off of that, with the creative side of things, getting that satisfaction from, getting out whatever that creative idea you have is, have you found ways, like the way you're explaining that, like when you are more in the supporting role, do you still feel like you can get that creative satisfaction? You can still kind of get something out of it. Maybe not exactly like it is if it's your own stuff, but I mean, can you still gain something or grab something out of that? Like if you are playing, maybe you're not the main songwriter in a band, but your rhythm guitar or something like that. I mean, can you still kind of find ways to get that satisfaction creatively out of kind
Absolutely.
of?
Yeah. I mean, as long as there's enough communication between you and the other band members, so that you feel that if the vision isn't your vision, if it's someone else's vision, that you are helping them to attain that. So that process is really fulfilling, and I would imagine like people that record bands, I don't record bands, but people that produce records, I would imagine that's a thrill for them too, but it's different than doing their own thing. It satisfies a different itch.
That has the help too from you coming from the side, like from having both sides, because I think that communication you're talking about, I don't know if you could have it if you didn't know what it was like to lead. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like you can put yourself in their shoes and probably go, okay, well, if I'm this guy, what do I think of, if the guitar player, the drummer, someone's coming up and giving me ideas, like that probably does help you in terms of communication, with someone who's the leader, because you can obviously pull from that side. You have that experience.
Absolutely. I mean, and I think that's, when we're younger, it's a really hard skill, because when we're younger, we have so much of our egos invested in every note of music that goes down. Like the difference between, the harmony being the third or the fifth will be like, oh my God, no, I bare my soul with the third. We can't do the fifth. That's insane. Whereas like, when you mature, hopefully, you go, okay, well, that's an artistic choice. And I think the fifth sounds better here. I think it's one of those things, and just like, you're not so precious about things. And so that allows for more collaboration, and more collaboration, in my world, is a much more satisfying endeavor than just, writing everything on my own and constantly knowing where the ship is heading. I like a little bit of chaos. I like a little bit of surprise.
That makes sense. That definitely makes sense. With her Heads on Fire, I was kind of wondering this, because I mean, there's definitely a who's who like in that band. I mean, all of you guys, this isn't like, no one I can think of in the band, this is like their only band. Everyone's in like other things. Do you consider this, because I don't know, people either like this word or they don't. Do you consider yourself a super group in any way, shape, or form, or do you not think of it that way? Do you not like that? Because I've heard
we are post-hardcore emo titans, and we should be recognized as such.
I love it. That is the best name you can have.
I don't know, man. I don't care. It's nice. I mean, I think I was in the least successful bands of all my bandmates, so I just ride on their coattails. I don't know if it does much. I think maybe it's enough to sort of get your foot in the door, or to make somebody's ears perk up and go, oh, I'll give that a listen, but I don't think, generally speaking, unless your band is a if not a carbon copy, a pretty damn close, like very much within the same genre and wheelhouse of the previous band that's being mentioned, I don't think most people care.
No.
Yeah. In my experience, like if it said like I don't know, like X Drive like Jehu, and it sounded like a doo wop band, which is actually kind of what John Reese does. Like I would like it, but I think most people would be like, no man, you said X Drive like Jehu. I wanted some fucking dissonance. I wanted that thing that you do, because people tend to get pigeonholed as artists. That's my experience.
No, that definitely that makes sense. But I also have you had, because like for me, I mean, I'm a fan of like all the bands that all you guys have been in, but like I didn't realize that. Like, I mean, even like talking to you before, I did not make the Garrison comparison. That rhymes, but I did not make the Garrison comparison, or anybody else either in the band. Where like, I don't know, are you getting people who are kind of realizing it at where like, hey, I really like the band's like, oh shit, like that guy's in it. Have you noticed that at all? Where it's like they're a fan, and because like again, I got into you and didn't realize that until basically that whole first listen to the first record, I didn't realize it was in the band. I had zero clue.
I would rather that. Do you know what I mean? Like I mean it. I would rather people take it on face value, and I don't want it to be academic. I don't want people to go like, oh, this is good because they did this art in the past. That doesn't matter to me. Mm-hmm. It should be enjoyable on face value. I would hope that would be the goal. And so I think ideally that would be the way that everyone would listen to it. It's a new band called Her Head's on Fire. It doesn't matter who's in it. What does it sound like? Put it on. But that said, more people are going to write an article or be more apt to play it on the radio. Or like I said, just give it a listen the first time. There's just so much fucking music out there that if that gets somebody's ears on you to know the previous body of work, then it's fine. I'm happy with that being, tacked on as an addendum, but I don't feel a kinship. I mean, it's guitar rock, so it's not going to be that different. It's not like we're doing a trip hop record, and I was previously in a metal band or something like that. It's all songs with guitars and vocals and drums, and they're, kind of in the pop format. So they're in the like 2.5 to 4 minute length ish. So, that's what we're working in. Those are the parameters. So it's going to sound somewhat similar to probably many ears, but I don't know how many people that listened to my old bands 20 some odd years ago are still checking out new and interesting music. Do you know what I mean? I'm hoping it's just catching people randomly, like you heard it and didn't know. And that's good.
I actually got to say the name of the debut record is kind of what I was like, I saw like new releases. I'm like, that's a great title. College Rock and Club Cigarettes. Thank right? I screwed that up. Okay. Like really, like I went off the name. I'm like, holy shit, that sounds something about that name. I was like, damn, that sounds cool. And I literally checked it out off of that without knowing that all you guys are like in my record collection already.
That's awesome. I mean, that's the best. Like I do that still. I'll listen to records and be like, and then read the liner notes and be like, oh my God, I've had that record for so long by this person that they did a long time ago. I really like the arc of people. I'm kind of flying against what I just said about the anonymity, but personally, as a music geek, I like following the arc that people have made. I think it's interesting for, I don't know who's from our scene, Stephen Brodsky from Caven. Like I like hearing his metal stuff. I like hearing the space rock stuff. I like hearing his like demented sugary pop stuff. I like hearing the Mutoid Man. I like hearing the different places that he goes over the course of his career. I find that interesting. I'm a big fan of a guy named Adam Franklin from Swerve Driver. Okay. And he has a project called Bolts of Melody, which is very cinematic, their new record. I really like following and just sort of seeing what people do, but that's just because I'm whatever word would fill the blank there. That's what I am.
I'm the same, whatever word that is. I like watching what kind of people do throughout their careers for sure. But with with Her Head's on Fire, have you guys, like, I know you have played shows, but I mean, to like what volume, like have you gotten to tour? How many shows have you played? Like, what is that kind of, what does that side kind of look like so far in the band's formation?
We do about like, 2 to 3. No. We did like 3 to 4 weeks of touring a year. So about a month. So not it's not crazy. It's not like it was 10 months out of the year like it used to be. But everybody has a family or other projects. Everybody is in, I'm a bass player for Saves the Day. I mean, he has a schedule sometimes where like we know for 2.5 months, Rodrigo's going to be out of commission. Um, so so we do tour, we do play shows. It's just because half of the band is in New York and half of the band is in Chicago, we can't do a lot of one-offs. So we'll
Yeah.
get offered shows, which is really, I wish we could do more sort of local shows in either Chicago or New York. But what ends up happening is we get a show offer of something that, like would be really neat to do. And then we try and build a few shows around it. So like maybe we'll get a festival. If we get the festival, like, okay, well, cool, we got the festival. Let's do like, a handful of shows on either end, rather than sort of just doing these one random Friday nights here or there.
Yeah, route it out a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
How about,
So yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, like, I was thinking about this earlier because a lot of times I'll talk to bands who like have been around for a while. And I talk about how like, it seems like it'd be hard compiling a set list when you have a huge, vast back catalog. But on the flip side, when you're like a newer band and you have 2 albums under your belt, at some point you only had one. Does that get hard at all? Making the set list, I guess the flip side, because I always talk to people like, what's it like when you got 12 albums you got to choose from to make like an 18 song set list? But what's it like, I guess on the other end, when you're starting out fresh here and you have like less to choose from? Has that been difficult at all? Or is that not hard ever kind of compiling a live set list?
It's not hard to me. I mean, I don't think I've ever been in a band that's lasted more than 2 or 3 records. So, I like projects. I'm very sort of focused in that way of like a project band. And so, that keeps it fresh and new and exciting. And it's nice to sort of be like, well, this is the sound now. I don't know what it's like to be, a band like, Thursday, right? So like they're that Full Collapse record is, they've had a lot of fans for War All the Time and a couple other records, but that Full Collapse is the one that everyone's like, oh my God, or Saves the Day. They've got a couple records that everybody's just, gaga over, and they're less apt to be excited about the new stuff. I think that's got to be a double-edged sword. On one level, it's great because people come out to your shows, and it's and it's an experience. But on another level, it must be a little bit disheartening to be like, I've grown as a songwriter and I've written all this and I want to show that to you. And people are like, no, I want to hear that song I heard that I used to blast in my Dodge with my friend in the windows down in high school, and I get that too.
No, that has to be hard. I think about it as a fan, but I go like, I mean, I think with artists like, yeah, sure, you want to hear, whatever song you loved 20 years ago, but I mean, whoever's on stage has probably written songs since then. There's a good chance they've written albums and songs and many things since, whatever they put out
right.
something years ago. So I do get that as the artist where, yeah, that has to be hard to kind of juggle and balance it all for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But, also like with someone like you is kind of, you've had experience now for a couple decades of these things, talking about playing shows, for like touring, the touring that you have done in with Her Head's on Fire and just even more recent stuff you've done. How does that compare to like touring when you started out? Because that's always interesting to me, like touring in the 90s versus touring now. Does anything stick out to you? I mean, I'm sure there's a million things. I won't ask you to, pick out everything, but I mean, does anything stick out to you or go like, wow, it's crazy different touring in the 90s versus touring in like the 2020s?
Well, age is a fun thing, right? So it used to be that and you're all in your 20s, you sleep on a lot of floors. My least comfortable experience, I think, has to be sleeping on marble in Italy. That shit does not have a lot of give to it, and it is cold.
I was going to say, it sounds cold.
It's very cold. And like getting a hotel is a luxury. Like maybe once a month you get a hotel room and you're like, oh my God. Well, that luxury is now a necessity. So it's like maybe 1 or 2 nights we'll stay with friends on a couch, which we're very, very, honored and happy to have generous friends. But for the most part, it's like, no, like we need a hotel room. Like our bodies will not get us through whatever these 10 days if we have to sleep on floors. So you don't spring back as much as you used to. But I mean, I try to make better use of my time. I think when you're younger and there's a lot of sort of a lot of nice experiences and camaraderie with, your bandmates. It's hard to sort of carve out time for yourself and have the experience of going through this life with other people. So in the early days, I think, at least in my experience, we spent a lot of time together. Like we would all we didn't have headphones, so we would all be listening to whatever was on the radio in the van, right? Everybody was. There was no choice. You couldn't be like, oh, I'm going to go listen to, this. Um, so we experienced that together. We get to a place, you're like, okay, well, we're all going to eat at the same place because we went out of our way to find like the cheapest pizza joint we could find. We're all sleeping in the same place. We're all, okay, we're going to hang out at the bar while we wait for the show to begin. And then we're going to hang out and party after the show at the same bar. Maybe we'll go to another place. We're all going to be a group and together. And now, we tend to be a little bit more healthy. And also carve out time for ourselves. We'll be in London and be like, oh man, I'm going to go rent a bike and I'm going to go bike up and down the Thames for a couple hours. I'm going to go see an art museum. I'm going to do something that's really fun because I'm here in this cool city. I'm not going to, just sit in a pub all day like I used to.
Yeah.
So that's a nice change.
That's nice. Yeah. Go see, I'm sure it takes you some neat places. Go see, what they have to offer around there. How about,
it's the best. Yeah.
How about like the other, touring being one of them, but also like, recording and releasing an album, nowadays versus back in the day, how about for that side? Is there anything like drastically different? And I'm talking, recording, promoting, just putting it together. Like, that whole process of getting an album ready and out there. Again, is there anything that really jumps out to you that is like insanely different now than when you started?
I know a lot more about the process or the processes now. Which I like. I'm a big fan of demystification, so I like, having knowledge about how these things work. I think when we were younger, it felt, the wheels of the machine seemed to churn a bit faster. We would give a record to Revelation with the artwork. Within 3 months, it was out, and so we were touring that record, and then about a year later, depending on the success of the record, the album cycle was done and they want another record. And so there was this pressure. Now, because, I'm not on a label that's pressuring me to put out records, we put it out on our own pace. And when we write, Her Head's on Fire happens to be a very prolific writing band. So we're already working on the third record.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So we're about halfway done with it. So that's really freeing because we don't have that pressure. But the process takes longer, like by the album being finished and the artwork and if all the, we'll call them assets, right? That's the industry speak, are done for the record label. Well, now the record label has to be like, well, where is it going to fit in? And touring has to be planned out so far ahead in advance. That's like, I'm thinking now about 2025 touring. I'm not thinking about the rest of 2024. That's all done. So that sort of the bigger picture, the stepping back and the bigger picture perspective is different. And knowing more is different, I think, which is an interesting place to be. I just, like I said, I like knowing that process. I like knowing the turnaround time on vinyl and why the turnaround time on vinyl. Why does it take so long? Or if it's quick, oh, that's great. Why is it quick? I want to know. I'm just curious.
No, that stuff always interests me for sure. I like hearing that. That's why I like doing this show. I love hearing that really like in depth. Same with, I don't know if it's still this way, but a couple of years ago, even talking to people where, our record's coming out, we think in 6 months, but vinyl delays were crazy there for a while where, I feel like half the people I came on were like, I think this is coming out soon. Like they're promoting something like check back, but tentatively like June, this will be out. And like, sometimes it would, sometimes it wouldn't. But yeah, that whole side of it's kind of interesting, kind of learning, that side of things.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
How about like, getting more into the making of the new album? Where was Strange Desires recorded?
Recorded at the Echo Mill in Chicago, Illinois. Jeff Dean, our guitar player, is a recording engineer. So nice. We're fortunate to sort of have a hookup at that studio. I fly out to Chicago. We make a record in just a handful of days. It was mixed by a gentleman named John Agnello. John would be most well known for He did all the Dinosaur Jr. records in the 90s. He did some Sonic Youth, Nothing. Really talented guy. And really, he was somebody that I wanted to work with for a very long time. So it was sort of like a realization of a dream to finally, have a record that mixed by him. That was really a nice moment, sort of full circle.
How long were you guys in the studio? Was this like I guess the other thing too is, I mean, was it all done in one sitting, or like nowadays, sometimes it's done in one sitting. Sometimes it's like we did a couple weekends.
Oh no, it's all done. We were ships passing in the night with the drummer because he was out there early. So the drums took setup and takes took 2 days, and then bass and basic guitars took a day, maybe another day. So we're now 4 days. Vocals took a day and a half, and then overdubs took about a day and a half. So where are we at? Like 5, 6, 7 days recording. Yeah.
Was much recording, like when you went in? Was there any writing going on, or when you went in? I mean, were these pretty much fleshed out and just let's go in and record them?
They've been fleshed out. I mean, the technology is amazing. So we make demos on our phones that sound better than most 7 inches from the 90s. That's just the technology. So we can make demos on our phones and send us back to have ideas. But I don't like to have it be too completed before we go into the studio, because you want the chemistry of the people that are in the room and the spark of an idea when you're listening to go, what about? Oh shit! What if we'd have a 12-string guitar do this? Yeah, that's a great idea. And you put it down before you overthink it. I think I pity. Pity is too strong a word. But people that own their own recording studios, because it must be so difficult to know when to stop making the record.
Oh yeah.
It's just so, like, I think it was like Spielberg said, like, you never finish making a film, you just decide to stop making it better. And it's like you have, like, if you have a recording studio, if you're Steve Albini, like, how do you ever finish that shellac record? But they did, RIP. But yeah, they did. So yeah, I think that has to be a blessing and a curse, because you have it at your fingertips and you have all this control, but the never ending desire to re-edit can lose some spark and spontaneity that the album might have.
Oh no, I'm of the party, and I mean, I'm sure there's a bunch of albums that would disprove me and that I love that took a long time, but generally speaking, I don't think the best albums are ones that took like 3 years to make and millions and millions of dollars. A lot of times, yeah, that's not. I think time sometimes is your enemy. Like, obviously you want a little time to work on it, but yeah, having months and months to like overthink that like little guitar noodle in the bridge, or like if we need strings here, this and that, I think after a while that can become detrimental to your creativity in the songs themselves.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, especially for the music that we're doing, because the whole thing about rock and roll and post-hardcore, hardcore, indie rock is it's supposed to feel, it's supposed to have energy, right? Yes. And you don't get energy taking 3 months to make a record. You're going to lose that. And some people have done a good job of it, but I think that I'm not sure how like long. It's a pretty grandiose idea, but like Shape of Punk to Come, like by Refused. So that's a big money record, so they spent some time with it, but it's also a big vision record. It's a much more all-encompassing vision they had with that record, and it goes a lot of different places, where a lot of the records that I make and a lot of the records that my friends make are pretty garage rock sort of oriented, that it's kind of like it should have energy and it should be loud and it should be over and now we're done. That's my feeling.
I'm definitely with you on that one. With the second record, like for song ideas, I mean, was there anything that you kind of started on the debut that maybe started as ideas that didn't get finished, that then got fleshed out into songs on this sophomore record? Or were there all kind of fresh ideas when writing for this one?
All new. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, Jeff, the way we write is Jeff Dean writes sort of a finished song structure with the chords, presents it to the drummer. The drummer has to like figure it out. In this instance, it was Jeff Gensterbloom. Up until just recently, we switched drummers, but and Jeff Gensterbloom has to be like, okay, well, I'm going to basically arrange this song based on the way I play the drums, and then I do the vocals, not knowing what Jeff thinks is the chorus or the verse, or I just kind of listen to it. He doesn't tell me anything. And then finally goes to the bass player. And Rodrigo now has basically a finished song where he gets to fill in the gaps and sort of be the harmonic through line to take you from point A to point, D.
We talked about it a little bit earlier, but I mean, comparing like writing a Her Head's on Fire song to like writing in Garrison, how drastically we talked about it a little bit, but I mean, how drastically different is that? Would you say it's night and day from writing in Garrison to writing, getting a song done in Her Head's on Fire?
Oh, sure. I mean, especially for me, because I don't have the genesis of the idea. So I'm creating and I'm interpreting. So I'm given a piece and I'm like, okay, well, what am I going to do here? I don't want to repeat myself too much. So I know I've done that before and I've done that idea before. And I'm like, oh, what if I kind of go in this direction? But the sort of the tempo, the feel, the dissonance or the consonance is already laid out for me. So I know, oh, this song is about to hit a halftime part. Like, I'm not creating that. I'm not editing that. I'm not saying, oh, my vocal demands this halftime part go longer. It's like, no, I've got to work within the parameters that I'm given, which I really enjoy. But whereas Garrison was, Ed and I sort of hashing out the feel and the vibe, we would just play guitar at each other in a room, just look at each other and play guitar and write. And then he would write something and I'd be like, I think this goes along with what you're doing. And sort of just hash our way through it. And then when we were done with a song, we would take it finished to the rhythm section with vocals and everything, and basically be like, this is where it goes, really heavy here. This is where it pulls back. And we had a lot of notes for the other players, which I'm sure they fucking loved. So this is a lot more like, yeah, that's cool. What you're doing is great. Let me put this on it and let's move it on to the next thing.
Nice. Mm-hmm. Talking a little more about Garrison, like this is talking about like the scene when you guys started. What did that, starting out in kind of the Boston area in like the mid 90s, could kind of paint that a little bit. What did the local music scene look like? Like for a band like Garrison, were there bands to play with? Were there places to play at? Like, what did that kind of look like starting out?
So there's a few places. There was the Space in Worcester, Massachusetts. There was certain venues. There's always the sort of stalwart venues for like the Middle East, right? But then people would do all ages shows at like, the YWCA or Mass Art or different places in the area. Or there's the QVCC in Framingham. There's sort of like underground spaces. The PA Club in Foxborough. Yeah, I think that's right. Anyways, there were lots of different places to play, and there's a big movement of the sort of DIY youth culture that was making music. So people influenced by, Fugazi, and which, back up would be Black Flag and back up would be Minor Threat and the whole Discord thing. I think we were all very excited and influenced by that. And then there were things like Revelation, paying attention to what Revelation was doing, paying attention to what Jade Tree was doing. And you had all these influences that were sort of going on. And a huge amount of the shows were all ages. And as much as there were a lot of musicians and people making music, more importantly, there were people that wanted to experience that music. So there were crowds, and it doesn't work in a vacuum. And so there were people that were excited that it felt like that wherever you would play, that was the place you wanted to be. Like that was the best place on earth that night. Whatever the show was, even if you were a part of it or you're going to see someone else play, wherever you were in that sort of nice time span in my head of my youth, that was like the fucking shit. This is the coolest place in the world right now. Not cool in the, not cool in the 80s kind of way, but cool in our way.
Did you kind of like talking about that scene, which sounds like an amazing scene? Did you have any overlap? Like another one that I talk about from that era a lot and like people from it was the like New Jersey pop punk ska scene of like late 90s, early 2000s. And I mean, pop punk and ska, but whatever you want to call it. I mean, was there any integration that like did you guys play a lot of like were you a part of that at all where you'd go play like the firehouses in New Jersey or jump on some of those? Because that was very much a scene and it sounds about the same where it's like, I mean, you guys would go play, it doesn't have to be a conventional venue. You could go play, like you said, a YWCA, a VFW hall or something, but a shit ton of kids will come out and like come to that. I mean, was there any overlapping there? Did you have anything to do with that scene going on over in New Jersey or no?
Not tremendously. The scenes that were kind of happening, they were all kind of happening organically from the ground up, right? So you had that. You also had what was going on in Long Island. There was a lot of hardcore going on in upstate New York. Every sort of area had its like one band that everyone's like, that was the fucking band. Like I think for upstate it was Snapcase.
Oh yeah, right up in Buffalo.
Yeah, right. So like for us in Worcester it was Cast Iron Hike. There's certain bands that you were like, oh, that's the fucking shit. They led the way, right? And then you'd start playing. But then there's like, once you start playing more and more and the crowds get bigger, there becomes this sort of like Venn diagram where we all overlap. So there'd be like, we kind of knew like the guys from Kicked in the Head and Big D and the Kids Table, because that was kind of the ska punk scene. We would see the shows, but Garrison would never be on those shows. But it wouldn't be weird for us to like see the flyers right next to the flyer for our show at the same restaurant or the same, on the same punk club wall. And then there was some overlap. There's more overlap between like the metal emo scene, and a little bit with the sort of straight edge hardcore scene with like the Bane in My Eyes 10-yard fight thing. But we kind of kept things like, it's just more like there'd be like the street punks would be like the Unseen, the guys like the Mohawks and the Liberty Spikes, but it's like really cool rock and roll music. They were great, but like we just wouldn't play the same shows. But we'd be playing the same underground venues, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like the ska show would be at the same place as the metal show would be the same place as the goth punk show. We wouldn't do the same night every night.
The other thing I always think is interesting, like, I mean, obviously, Massachusetts, so many amazing like bands and scenes have come out of that state and, around the surrounding Boston area and like all of that. But like the thing I'm always interested in, and we're talking about it right now, like the pockets going around, but were there any like really cool pockets elsewhere in New England going on? Because that's a place that interests me. Like, was there anything going on in this era, like the mid 90s, where you're like, holy fuck, if you go to like New Hampshire, there's like this insane, post-hardcore scene going on, or there's this crazy like scene going on over here in Vermont. Like, were there any other ones you remember going on in that New England region or no?
Vermont and New Hampshire were the hippie jam bands, man. They had I went to college in New Hampshire, so I saw a lot of Percy Hill and Moon Boot Lover and I was gonna stretch my Thanks to Gravity. We're talking about pop punk band, not pop punk, but like pop rock acoustic style violin thing from that era. They just the earthy crunchy thing. It was happening up in New Hampshire, and then you get like the outliers, like Scissor Fight. They were a sort of sludgy, fun metal band from New Hampshire, and they were like, they didn't fit with the hippie jam band music, so they'd come down to Boston and play with like all the Hydra Head bands. So we Garrison got for better or for worse, we got associated with the hardcore scene because of Revelation. I think those were some of our friends, so some of our first shows were on that indie rock, hardcore emo rock scene. But we really once we put out records on Rev, we were entrenched in that. So we're going to be in the anything that was like Texas Is the Reason, nice. Game Face, Elliot. We were supposed to be like the next iteration of that kind of idea, and at least that's the way it was perceived, being on Revelation.
Yeah. Did you with kind of going off that? Does that like with the scene? I mean, because I don't know how well Garrison fit in with like hippie jam bands. Like when you started playing other places, was it more aiming for like New York and stuff than it was more north and like the New England. Like, were there places Garrison could go
Yeah.
play around New England, or did you have to kind of look more south of?
No, there were, but it wasn't up north. I mean, you could maybe play like Portland, in Maine, but it was mainly the Boston shows, the Worcester shows. There were some shows in Western Mass, Providence, Rhode Island, and then Hartford and New Haven, Connecticut. Those, and that would be what you would play, and then you would come across and do Syracuse, Rochester, do RIT, and then you do Buffalo, and then the city, New York, and then sometimes Long Island, and then if you're doing Jersey, doing Northern Jersey, doing like the Melody Bar, I think it was called, or Jeff Rickley's Basement, that kind of thing. Like, and then like, Pennsylvania, as you go, like each town had, it's like, oh, that's the one venue you would play if you play music of our ilk. And they didn't have venues like that at the time, at least not that I was aware of, in New Hampshire, Maine, or Vermont. No, 242 in Burlington, Vermont. Simon Brody from Drowning Man booked that. So that was one place that was actually quite cool to play in Vermont, up in Burlington.
Very nice. When you guys like started, when Garrison kind of got out of the like local region and you start kind of hitting the road and touring, who were like some of the bands like early on you were kind of hitting the road with? Do you remember kind of who were those, I don't know, touring contemporaries, if that's the word? Who were you playing with early on?
I have a list here of every show Garrison ever played.
Oh man.
So the first band that ever took us out on a U.S. tour was Boy Sets Fire.
Oh, nice.
That was 99 maybe, or 99 going into 2000, or maybe like spring of 2000. So those guys sort of showed us gave us the ropes. First time we went to the West Coast. And then when we didn't do a lot of full tours. We did in the UK and in Europe, but in the States, we did more sort of long weekends or one-offs with bands. We did a lot of sort of headlining touring on our own. We weren't particularly cool. So I think a lot of our contemporaries like looked at us and were like, you guys are just, wow, you're odd. And I think that they, sometimes you get a lot further being like the cool guy that's like, yeah, let's hang with him, he's a maniac, than the guy that's just like, yeah, check out this crossword puzzle I'm working on. People are like, fuck off. So anyways, we did a lot more one-offs than we did, or like I said, like, 5 or 6 shows with a band than we did like a full tour.
Would you mind, we were talking about it a little earlier with, playing with Her Head's on Fire, and I mean, doing a little touring. I mean, obviously, like you said, kids and obligations and stuff, maybe you guys aren't going to go do 10 months on the road. But I mean, if opportunity came up, would you like to ever get into that again, like road dogging it, or does that just not even appeal to you? Like the thought of going out on tour for 8 months, does that appeal to you in any way, or no?
No.
No.
I mean, it would, I mean, if it was financially viable, if I could actually make money at it, then it would be something to consider. But just for the experience, I've had that experience. I've had that experience many times, and I'm very fortunate to have that experience, but life moves on, and I would prefer to have the experience of knowing my children right now. I would like them to remember or recognize me. So, and be a part of their lives, because that experience will go away at some point in the future too. They will grow up. And I think I would, I would deeply regret if I missed a large swath of their childhood because I was on tour. Now, if I was on tour and it was, like I said, financially viable, and I'm like, oh, well, I'm saving for college for them, then that's a different story. Then that's, that's work. And I'd be like, okay, well, kids, I'm going to call you a lot, for the next year and a half. But I don't think it's something I could sustain. I don't think I could sustain a 300 and 250 shows a year kind of lifestyle. That doesn't interest me.
No, it seems hard to keep up after a while.
Yeah, I mean, I love performing, and I absolutely adore it, and I don't mind the travel, but everything's a trade-off, and the price for that at this point in my life would be too high.
With Her Head's on Fire, is there anything that you kind of goals or anything you'd like to see kind of happen with the band? Or is it more of, do you think in those terms, or is it more of just go with the flow? Let's see what happens as we kind of, write music and play shows. I mean, or do you have anything that you do actively go like, I'd really like to see us do that, or I'd really like to kind of accomplish this with the band?
It's step by step, and it always has been. It's when Garrison started, we wanted to make a demo tape. So that was the goal. And we made a demo tape. And they're like, okay, now let's book a tour. And so we booked a tour, and it just would go step by step. Like, oh, maybe we can do a 7-inch. That's cool. And then you just do the next thing. Somewhere in there of that exciting time when you're making music, especially if you're younger and you get signed to a label that has distribution, you start thinking, could I do this for a living? And then you start thinking about trying to do this for a living. And that can, I'm not saying it would be difficult because you're going to change your music and try and write, radio pop. It's less that as much as like you will start to get discouraged if you're not as quote unquote successful as you think you should be. That's a really terrible way under which to make art. So my sort of, once I kind of went through a phase of that, got on the other side of it, my philosophy now is just like, well, I'm going to do whatever I'm going to do, and I'm just going to push it. I owe it to the work to push it as much as I can push it. But I don't have any say in how successful it is. Like I'm not the youth culture right now. Like I'm not, what's a popular band like Gel or Scowl or I don't know, other popular bands that are younger. But like they are going through that, and they're making great stuff, and they're out on the road all the time. That's never gonna happen. Like that sort of like road dog thing again. I'm never gonna be playing squats again, probably. Much as I like them. So it's up to me to push it as much as I can. I try and make the best record I can. I try and make it look as good as I can make it look. I try to make the stage performance as enjoyable as it read to people, as that I want them to know. I want the experience to be as enjoyable to them as it is for me, because I absolutely love performing. So if I can get a fraction of what I'm feeling to an audience member, then that's success. So if they can experience a moment of the joy that I'm having on stage, then that's success. But whether or not we sell X amount of records or have X amount of fans or streams on a playlist on a streaming platform, that's not up to me. You just push it as much as you can. And, if the zeitgeist deems you to get 10,000 plays, you get 10,000 plays. If it deems 1,000, 1,000, if it deems a million, it's not up to me.
That seems like a healthy way to look at it, honestly. That seems like a way more healthy way to look at it. And I know it's talking to someone who, I don't know that you really always had that, like you're talking about. I'm sure in your 20s, you may not have that same clarity, but like, going through it and being in so many bands and doing as much music as you have, it seems like you have a well-adjusted thought of like how to go about a band and not like obsess over what are the numbers, how many records did we sell, Strange Desires, when's that like diamond, platinum diamond, record showing up at my front door kind of thing.
Well, it's such a false equivalence to success. There's no magical number of people that need to like your music for you to be famous or successful or whatever it is in your head that you think you're going for. There is no, never go, oh, well, I made it, I'm done. You know what I mean? Like,
it doesn't happen.
Yeah, it's this brass ring that you're constantly reaching for. It's like, I'm sure I've used this, analogy before. Like, I'm sure the Get Up kids who are super talented and have been super fortunate and done really, really well for themselves, I'm sure there's a piece of them, maybe not anymore, but used to think, man, if we could just be as big as Jimmy Eat World. And that there's a piece in Jimmy Eat World that goes, man, if we could just be the Foo Fighters, we're right there. We could be the Foo Fighters. And the Foo Fighters are probably just want to be like, Queen. You know what I mean? Like it's a never ending, terrible sounding experience. That sounds very cancerous to me.
No, you don't hit the there's no final level. I've learned that I've talked to people who have had success where like they have had that platinum record of that radio hit. But once you hit that, it's not the end. You're not at the top of the mountain. Now you have to go, do I keep sustaining this? Which also that's a pain in the ass. That's hard. And there's no guarantee you're going to sustain it. So it's like it's almost this like you think you're at the top, but no, you're never really at the top and it never really ends. Like you're saying, it just becomes a new thing. You sold 1 million records. Well, now you want to sell 3 million. You're not, oh, I sold 1 million, job well done. I'm fulfilled in life. I need to do nothing else again. I'm fulfilled. Like, yeah, it just becomes something else. And yeah, that does seem like a trap. That doesn't seem like a great way to do something creative.
And and that's the thing. Is like, is that why you did it? Like, I never thought I was going to sell 1 million records. Like, I didn't get into it to do that. That wasn't fulfilling. If selling records was my goal, it wouldn't be making this kind of music. Like it would be very different. There's a great a fellow podcaster of yours, Keith from the New Scene. He had a really cool interview with the guy from the Dandy Warhols, and he was saying how and I've had this experience a little bit too, because Instruction was on Geffen Records, so that whole LA major label thing was a head fuck. But he said, he spent all this time missing out on certain experiences, or maybe pushing away people and friends and experiences from back home, from his hometown, right? To get past that velvet rope at the cool party, because he just wanted into the cool party. He wanted to be there, right? And so you get in there and you look around and you realize you're surrounded by a bunch of people that kind of stepped over all their friends from home to get where they are. And you look around and you're like, oh, this is the last bunch of people in the world I want to be with. Everybody just did what I did, and that sucks. And so if you're lucky enough, you can go back, But I think sustaining that thing, that LA thing, that like famous, that success thing, that's not why I ever, wanted to make music in the first place. So why should that suddenly become the focus of what I need out of art? That sounds odious.
I love that viewpoint too, that idea of you're there and now you're up there with a bunch of people who also like you kind of stepped over people or just weren't. That's such a great, I've never really thought of that. I really like that. I'll have to go and check out that interview.
Listen, it's a great podcast. It's a great podcast, and that interview in particular. Like, I'll tell you honestly, I don't even like the Dandy Warhols until I heard that interview, and I was like, "This dude's awesome." And then I went back and started listening. I'm like, I really dig this band, actually.
I only know like the 1 or 2 big hits. I'll have to I'll check out that podcast. Maybe I'll also go listen to. Maybe I'll become a #1, the biggest Dandy Warhols fan after that.
Oh, that's good, man. I'm sure they'll be pleased about that.
Do you have, outside of music, do you have any other creative outlets, or is this kind of is this how you get the creativity out of you, or do you have anything outside of music?
Well, I own and manage a wine shop. I have one in Brooklyn, and I have one up where I live in Saratoga. And so that's it's not the same, but it's basically like curation. Oh, so nice. Like how you would, it's you can imagine owning your own independent record store, right? You can imagine like what you'd have on the turntable, like how you'd set up the genres, what records you'd be like, oh, I need to have that, well, that's kind of my wine shop, except it's not your ears, it's your palate, you're experiencing. So it's like I tend to support a lot of really small producers, people that like are crafting wine, and they don't make 1 million cases of it out in California and slap a label on it, ship it everywhere. You can get it at Costco. It's like, no, this is like they made 80 cases, and 20 of them came to the United States, and of that 25 came to New York, and I got 3 of them. Oh, so it's like that kind of stuff. Like that's exciting to me. So curation is a satisfying endeavor, but it doesn't scratch the same itch as the creation of music.
Nice. I'm happy you're making new music and already working on album 3 for her. That's right. My God. Kind of with that, we got a couple months left of the year. What else? Anything else coming up the rest of the year from either Her Head's on Fire or you just in general? Anything else in the next couple months we should be kind of alert for?
Well, the big thing is, so her head's Strange Desires is still out. We're still playing shows. We're going to continue to play shows for it into 2025.
Nice.
And the biggest show we have coming up, it would be Fest down in Florida in Gainesville at the end of this month in October. We're playing cool showcase with Code 7 and Game Face and
oh, nice.
Ways Away, who are pals. So that'll be a really fun experience, and that's a really fun weekend for us. So and then I don't know, more shows. We'd like to get back. We just toured the UK last summer. We're gonna try and get back to the UK in 2025 as well, see some old friends and play some shows there, because I really enjoy playing music there, and for whatever reason people in the UK dig what I do, which I am honored to experience.
That's pretty sweet. Did I see too, actually, speaking of Game Face, did I see Jeff did like something with the album art or something? Jeff Caudill, did he do something with that?
Yeah, he does all our album art. He
Nice.
Yeah, I met him because he was the in-house guy at Revelation. So he worked with Garrison. And I was a big fan of his band as well, and so we just keep in touch. And I love what he does. Jeff's fantastic. Jeff's like at the top of his game as for what he does. I mean, like if there's like a reissue of like a Lord of the Rings on DVD box set, like Jeff did the artwork for that. Like he's at that level of design, and so he works with us because he's awesome. And he's a pal, and it's just so nice because he kind of gets it. Like we've got a good working relationship. So I'll just be like, I'll give him a couple touchstones. I'm like, I'm thinking of this. I'll send him the album. I'm like, but you just do your thing. And I'm like, you got 4 months to do this. And usually like 2 days later, he'll send me back like, this is what I did. And I'm like, oh, it looks fucking great. Which is nice.
I forget, I've actually had Jeff on the show 4 or 5 times. He's like one of my favorite guests, but we don't get into that side enough. Like we do talk a little bit about like low coast, and we talked about how he kind of designed everything for a low coast and all that, but we don't get into that as much as how much you are right, how prolific he is in that side of things. I talk so much music with him. It's like, my God, like you're a fucking genius, like visually as well.
That low coast record is so good too.
I love that thing.
He sent me a couple of new songs which are even better.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so just keep an eye out or ear out for new stuff from them, because man, what a talented guy. There's a perfect example of a guy who I like the whole arc. I like the Game Face stuff. I like his solo stuff, and I love this stuff. And I like hearing the places he goes and hearing all these other influences. The Tom Petty in him. I like hearing the Ryan Adams in him, the Oasis, all these things like that he has back there that maybe he can't express in the pop punk world, but he can with other bands. That's a thrill.
Oh no, me and him have talked just as much about like Jawbreakers. We have like the Replacements and
Hell yeah,
Star and like the power pop side of things. So yeah,
nice.
I think that's what makes them so good. And Game Face, I think the range of that, there's a lot more going on there than just straight up just pop punk or emo or post hardcore. Like there's a lot more, I feel like, dimensions in there that maybe people overlook sometimes. And,
absolutely. It's super intentional,
for sure. But as we start closing this out, I had a blast talking music with you, man. Where should we send people to go grab the new Her Head's on Fire? Everything else, where do we find you online? Like all of that, like plug away. Where can we go find it? Even the winery.
No, you don't have to come.
Whatever you want.
Hey man, if you want to drink, I'm pretty good at buying wine. It's called Northside Discount Liquor and Wine in Brooklyn, in Williamsburg, and then I have By the Bottle in Saratoga Springs. If you want to come talk wine, find me. Her Head's on Fire's new album, which has been out for a couple months now, Strange Desires, is going strong. You can get it at Iodine Records, distributed by Death Wish, or you can listen to it for free on all the streaming platforms. And then we're just going to be playing shows, so look out for us and come hang out and dance. Have a good time. That's all I can really think about. That's the main thing. I don't have any other projects that are ready to go. There's always something back here, but it's not out here yet.
I mean, that new record, you got a new Her Head's on Fire record. People haven't heard
Yeah,
that.
but who knows when that'll be done? And that's not, I don't even have a title for it. So it's just going to be, I'll just say new Her Head's on Fire record coming out someday.
Well, no, we'll, if people are listening to podcasts, if you're listening to a radio show too, go grab the new album. But the radio show is 3 hours, so we'll play the record front to back. We'll play Strange Desires. We'll play that for people after we've talked about for an hour. Now they'll get to hear the record. But as we do that, anything else to let people know as we close this out? Have we missed anything? Is there anything else to close on?
In a perfect world, you'd listen to it driving with a friend with the windows down. Maybe as dusk comes on. That would be the ideal way to listen to this record. But listening is a really fun group experience. So if you're with another person listening at the same time, that's the best. So ideally, that's how folks should listen to it. That's I'll say that.
Doing the radio math, by the time this is over, it should be the music start playing around 9:30ish at night. So it's that the sun is down. A nice night drive. I think you guys are a good night drive band.
I'm down with that, man. That'd be fun as hell.
Or the Tuesday replay. That one's at 8 o'clock Friday nights, 8 to 11. But if people are listening on the replay, late ass Monday night, it's like 2 a.m. right now. So you can go for a really late night drive and listen to this record if you're listening to the 2 a.m. replay.
Drink some coffee, people. Stay up. Stay awake. Come on.
Well, this I'm sure this won't be the last time we have you on. We definitely got to have you on again. Probably next time next new record comes out. But
that'd be great, man.
Well, I am Anthony Merchant talking to Joseph Grillo of Her Head's on Fire, of Garrison, a million other bands. We'll play you some Her Head's on Fire right now, so we'll get into that. But yeah, this is the Power Chord Hour. Thank you so much for listening.